Right now we are going to explain another architectural feature of the Unbeing House. Architectural feature 1 is the columns that I am showing you in more detail right now. Right? This doesn't have drains. This one have one tube here, one pipe here. These are PVC pipes. They have other here. This is 4 inches wide, coming straight from the column. This is a column that has toxic gas leaks. Toxic oxide leaks. Here is another toxic gas drain. This is the column that is from the balcony. The columns of the balcony are very important to be understood because they are not normal columns. And to understand that, we need to show the foundational sound columns. We're now going to where the foundational columns of the house are. I have been told many times through the years that the columns of this house are wider than usual, because I have asked that, because they have more varilla in Spanish, because they are anti-terremotos, anti-seismic. However, this is the real size of the foundational column. It's 12.5 inches. This round column is a little bit bigger, 13-14 inches. The fact is that this is a patchwork. Would you imagine a real architect and a real engineer of a very costly house, because this was designed by an architect that is a costly house, doing this kind of patchwork? Please also notice the drains of the roof are not visible. These are real drains of the roof. I have seen the water coming from the roof. But well, they don't want the color of the roof water be seen. The same happens in the backward parts that I already showed in the introduction video. And now you see here what they supposedly could argue. This is a water drainage, but it's not. There is another water. Rayo! This is another one. I haven't seen this one. Jesus Christ! How many bulbs you have here? Oh my God, this is a whole water system. There are 1, 2. Ooh, what happens if I close this? Excuse me. Okay. I'm closing it. It was open. This one can be moved. They are closer right now. I never have seen those bulbs in my life. Once again, you see there are many water bubbles that you have no idea for what they use it. All right, now let's explain why the size of the balcony columns matter. Well, anyone with the proper knowledge can explain to you even better than I. Now you can see the neighbor in the front doing noises, and this one too. This is gaslighting. All right. These columns that are not foundational, this one has a little bit of weight here. The other two on this side, well, they're simply getting by. The weight is simply wood, nothing weighty. However, these columns are 22 inches wide, very heavy, concrete. They are the widest and the widest columns of the whole house. Why would a house will have the widest columns in the balcony? That is not the whole issue. You see that column there and that part? These are 17 inches wide columns. You can see it innerly here. That is the measure. You have another column here that is absolutely structurally, this metal tube that is hollow, es hueco, is absolutely necessary. You have enough concrete foundation to sustain the whole house without that in the middle. So why do you have it there? We'll talk about that later. Let's now focus on the columns. This is a 15 inches column. And this is a 13 inches column. So please notice that the widest and the most heaviest concrete columns are in the balcony that doesn't have that only have a wood roof, and in this zone, in the middle zone, they even have a support metal beam in the middle that is absolutely not necessary in an ordinary domestic setting, and the electric wire goes there, so there is the metal column. All right. So why this is important? Well, the first thing to mention is if these are widest columns, is because something there is more important or more weighty in the roof, and it needs more support in that zone. And that will also explain, at least structurally, why they need a support beam here. There is something in the roof in that part that is covering by let me explain it better. If you see this from the outside part, whatever is there that is supposed to be visible, well, it won't be visible because they have that architectural feature here, the mailbox, the buzón. Whatever is back, it won't be visible, even from the street. But something must be there to have the electrical wire there. Now, what happens in this zone? In order to have gas chambers underground in this zone, you need something to distribute weight so they don't implode or explode. And there goes the very weighty columns that are supposedly not needed because there is nothing to be held. What is important is what it is underground. They need to divert and distribute the weight in order to the toxic gas chambers that are there being able to sustain and not implode. As I mentioned, this part was not even covered. This was done less than a year ago. The reason of doing this was simply them don't wanting anyone to excavate there. But the fact is, it's very easy to see if there is something there. You have radars and you have monitors. I don't know how is the name. I mean, engineer and a proper engineer, well prepared, can simply scan see the beam with the right instrument and see the ground with the right instrument and can confirm there is gas chambers there. But structurally, everything confirms, including the beams, and that is the importance of the beams. There is something there that requires a lot of weight to distribute down, not up, in order to these columns be here. And remember, these columns are more weighty and wider than the foundational zone columns. Absolutely not. How would you explain that it's necessary a wider column in a balcony than in a foundational? If that is because you are building an anti-seismic house. This is not anti-seismic. If it is anti-seismic house, well, the foundational column will be the same size. Please notice that the foundational beam, the foundational column, is 12.5 inches, and these have 22 inches of diameter. Is almost the double of the foundational column. Almost the double. So, other important observation here is that columns, when built, are meant to be built for structural support. They are not meant to be built like this one, and like this one very evidently. They are not meant to be built to have pipes inside, like this one very evidently has. There was a huge issue with this being a little bit while ago, about 4 years ago. about year 2020, 2021, 2020, 2021. Well, upstairs, I mean, in the upper part of this zone is my bathroom, my gas chamber bathroom. They said that a pipe broke in my bathroom, making this column leak, what was leaking around this height. And that they needed to remodel the whole bathroom, my whole bathroom, in order to do that reparation. And they must do it, because if they don't do it, this beam could collapse. The concrete could collapse. Well, the water that was coming from here was brownish. They deleted all these photos from my iCloud, right? That's why I'm not showing them. But if whoever can track what I share in social media can search for these photos in the past. Well, all these zones around here, they had a huge leak of oxide water. What now you can know is a true leak of a water pipe. First of all, there should not be pipes inside of a structural column. That is not their purpose. Second, if it is true water leak, it will be transparent, not oxide color. They said, that is because the varilla, the metal beams inside the concrete that make the house anti-seismic, that is why the water came oxide. No, it's not that. A water leak comes transparent, period. If you have a water leak that have oxide color, the same applies to something that happens quite often in the past, and they deleted the photos too. In several parts of the house, especially under the frame of my door, the roof, and the bathroom too, and this bathroom too, they will have a huge condensation issue of brown water in the roof being like condensated. That is a very specific toxic gas that I don't remember now, but I will mention it later. Well, the fact is, a column being used for tubes, especially having holes that indicate that are for toxic gas or any kind of gas, that is not normal. Absolutely not normal. This should be the focus of the whole column system of the balcony. This one. Why? Because this is the one that has shown toxic leaks. Something is inside of this column that is leaking toxic casing. What it is? Well, they will know. They have actually painted this column several times. Sometimes, I don't know why, they begin to paint zones of the house without no kind of reason. I mean, they had never cared to paint the interior of the house. Why would they care to suddenly just begin to paint things that they don't care? They are not there. Well, that is the reason, because they sometimes need to cover up toxic casing trusses. Well, this will be the finish of architectural feature 1, the columns of the house.